He's so good. How do you beat this guy? Everything he says, he does. He just slumped Oliveira out cold. Ilia Topuria is the new lightweight champion of the world. Just absolutely slumped Charles Oliveira after UFC 317. I thought this was a really good card. Probably the best card of the year. We're going to be going through every individual fight on this card, but damn, Ilia Topuria might go down as the greatest fighter of all time. Every single thing he says, he ends up doing. It's a shame as an Oliveira fan to see this, but shit, this is a good card, and we'll go through every fight, and we'll eventually get to the main event. Starting off with Jhonata Diniz versus Alvin Hines. Actually a really good fight for a heavyweight division. We've seen a lot of stinky heavyweight fights recently. I think the last finish in a heavyweight fight was quite a while ago, but this was a pretty decent fight. Diniz ends up winning. Hines actually put up a decent performance. He had a decent stamina across 15 minutes, which isn't really something we used to in the heavyweight division. Diniz just kind of picks him apart and obviously gets the win against Jhonata Diniz. But my takeaways from this fight, it was a great fight to kick off the card. That's what heavyweight should be. If this is the standard for unranked heavyweight fights, I'm not mad. You know, I get rid of the blobs like Justin Tafa and Junior Tafa. Alvin Hines and Diniz, I don't mind this shit. Keep Alvin Hines in the UFC, man. Imagine Alvin Hines versus like a Chris Barnett or some shit. Or Alvin Hines against some sort of, I don't know, like a Justin Tafa. I think we keep him in the UFC. He's got a decent pace across 15 minutes. He kind of does show the state of the division. The Diniz, who's meant to be a heavyweight prospect, goes life and death with Alvin Hines, who looks like a middle-aged dad, coming in on 4 days notice from the regional scene. It is quite embarrassing for the heavyweight division, but the fight itself, like I said, it was good. And keep Hines in the UFC. Looks better than, he genuinely looks better than 60% of the UFC roster. He's in better shape. His gas tank's better. He's got more heart than most of the heavyweight roster too. Honestly, I reckon he'd finish Sergey Spivak across 15 minutes. Do him versus Chris Barnett. And for Diniz, picked him apart, still looked heavily flawed though. You know, you're coming from Glory Kickboxing, but you cannot, when it comes to the heavyweight division, looking good unless you're in the top 5 doesn't really exist. So Diniz picked him apart, still made it a close fight because we're talking about heavyweights here. You have to put 5% effort in and you win the fight, but Diniz gets the job done against Alvin Hines. But I'm not mad. For heavyweight slop, it was a pretty decent fight to kick off the card. Alvin Hines took a beating, kept walking forward. Both pretty athletic as well for the heavyweight division. I know Diniz comes from a kickboxing background, but even Alvin Hines, guy looks like he can't lift his leg, but then he ended up going out there and chucking out high kicks like it's nothing. But good fight. Diniz gets the win. Probably going to be somebody in the top 15, like a Mick Parkin next for him, because you beat a regional guy, you get someone in the top 15 at heavyweight. And for Alvin Hines, like I said, keep him in the UFC. Midweight, seems like a nice guy, and put up a decent performance. So decent way to kick off the card. Then we had what I've been hyping up as my best prospect in the UFC, Jacobe Smith, as he submits Niko Price in the second round. Now, I'm going to be honest, Jacobe Smith, he let me down a little bit. I've been saying this guy's going to be a future top 5 guy in the welterweight. I'm not so confident about that anymore. I think he might only be top 10. He goes out there against Niko Price, gets the job done, ends up pulling off a submission over Niko Price. He did dominate the fight. I know the commentators kind of made it a lot closer than it was, but he definitely dominated the fight, ended up getting the submission over Niko Price, nearly finished him like 3 different times, dropped him in the first round, right at the end of the round and earlier on in the round as well, ended up taking him down and mauling him with a grapple. It was a dominated performance from Jacobe Smith. He would be unstoppable with a good gas tank. It is his only flaw. We never knew coming into this fight his gas tank was bad, because the rest of his fights had all been put out in the first round. He's got an average fight time of a minute. You look at his record, so he's one of the most dangerous dudes in the welterweight division. If he had a good gas tank, he'd be unstoppable, but it's too good to be true. We can't get good things in the UFC, as highlighted by the main event. But yeah, he's got the power of a Ford Escort, wrestling of DC, but he gasses out so fast. But he's a legit prospect. He's good everywhere the fight goes. His wrestling's legit, as he just, you know, displayed against Niko Price and in the Contender Series. Hits like a truck. All this guy needs to do is start going on a few runs, you know, go on a couple of runs, improve your stamina, and I genuinely don't see anybody beating him in this division. Obviously, if you put him against someone in the top 5, and now he gets his ass whooped, but I think if you build him up like you should with a prospect, I think he's got a shit ton of potential, because he did dominate the fight. A bit dodgy in the post-fight Octagon interview, though. I'm not sure if he's got anything wrong with him. Maybe he does have a bit of autism, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, maybe he does, because the way that he kept repeating Joe Rogan's name, odd behavior. But then Niko Price, listen, this guy's got 7 kids to feed, which I still don't understand how he can afford 7 kids as a UFC fighter, but he's got about 7 kids. And I understand you've got to feed them somehow, but man, you should hang the gloves up soon. It seems like every other fight Niko Price is getting finished, from, you know, getting dominated by Tembe Gorimbo, finished by Jacobe Smith, knocked out by Robbie Lawler. Niko Price, is he even a legend though? I feel like this is bad habit in the UFC. If anybody that's been in the UFC for over a decade is automatically a legend. He's not a legend. He's never reached title status. He's just been in the UFC for a long time. Anyway, Jacobe Smith, best welterweight prospect. I might have to change my hype on him a little bit. Maybe he doesn't get to the top 5. Maybe it's just the top 10. But my point is, if he can improve his stamina, he's going to be unstoppable. Even in this fight, dropping Niko Price, dominating with the grappling, got the submission on nearly 2 occasions and obviously got it in the second. Great prospect is Jacobe Smith. Then we had Terrence Mckinney versus Borshchev. Terrence Mckinney must have some phobia of making it past the first round. If there is a Terrence McKinney fight, bet the fucking house that it doesn't get past the first round. He gets a submission over Borshchev in the first round and made it look pretty easy. Immediately as the fight starts, shoots a takedown, and within a minute, gets the submission with a Borshchev and showcases his grappling. Yeah, Terrence McKinney, he has an inability to go past 3 minutes. Has he ever gone past the first round in his entire MMA career from start to finish? I don't think he has. The guy, I think he might actually be the guy to overtake Tom Aspinall as the shortest average fight time in the UFC. He might actually be the most exciting as well, because he is the definition. I know I say this about a lot of fighters, but Terrence McKinney is this guy. He is the definition of kill or be killed. He's so dangerous. Submission ability, great wrestling, powerful as fuck on the feet, but he's also so vulnerable. His chin lets him down, and so does his defense. He's just so quick in your face immediately. Great win for Terrence McKinney though. 2-fight winning streak now with obviously 2 first-round finishes. He's literally a don't miss fighter. He is don't blink. You cannot blink with a Terrence McKinney fight, and it is his wrestling as well. I feel like he started to improve his wrestling. He came into the UFC with a bit of a wrestling background, but that seems to be his base now. You know, he just dominated Hyder with the wrestling. In this fight with Borshchev, just took him down off the get-go and got the submission like it's nothing. So I know it's hard to say this about Terrence McKinney when it seems like every 2 to 3 fights he's getting brutally finished. But he's a bit of a prospect at 155. He honestly is. I know he's vulnerable, and I know he's probably going to get in a highlight reel sooner or later, but because of how dangerous he is offensively with the grappling and with the striking, he is a bit of a prospect at 155, and I will say this about Terrence McKinney. I got a personal relationship to him. He showed up in my live chat it was actually last year. He started showing up in my live chat, started critiquing me for having Brit bias against Tom Aspinall. Well, obviously that's not turned out well for McKinney, but either way, I'm going off topic. Terrence McKinney, great finish over Borshchev. I want to say give him a bonus, but there's so many bonuses you can give to people on this card. It's hard to just hand it out, and it's crazy as well. For a guy like Terrence McKinney, he's never had a UFC bonus in his career, but either way, great finish from McKinney, one of the most dangerous dudes at 155. Then we have Viviane Araujo versus Tracy Cortez. Basically just as I expected. Tracy Cortez wins the decision pretty dominantly, doesn't get the finish. She is the Movza of the women's flyweight division, but yeah, Tracy Cortez dominated this fight with the wrestling. She's really good for the division, is Tracy Cortez. Really good to watch. I really enjoy watching all of her fights, and she just dominated Araujo, got the job done, was lighting her up on the feet in the striking exchanges every single time she'd take her down. Wasn't really doing much damage with ground and pound or threatening submissions, but had the control time and had the dominant position across the full 15 minutes. And unlike Terrence McKinney, Cortez has an inability to finish people. I don't think she's ever gone to a finish in a UFC career, at least in the octagon. But yeah, listen, Tracy Cortez, I don't think anyone really shows up to watch her fight for the fight itself, if we're being real. But it's a dominant performance from Tracy Cortez, and I will say, I said this in the build-up as well, a lot of people have this misconception that she's only got hype because she's attractive, and yes, that's true, but she has got skill. Like, I legit think she's like a top 5 gatekeeper, could potentially break into the top 5 of this division. She's one of the more well-rounded women in this division. She's got pretty decent boxing. If you remember a couple of years back, she pieced up Jasmine Judovicic, who's on an absolute roll right now. She only really lost to Rose Namajunas in a decision recently, and she just dominated Araujo, who had that really good win over Korean Silver. So I think Tracy Cortez is pretty legit. If she can improve a hole in the game here and there, I think she can genuinely break the top 5 and become a title contender eventually. I know it's quite too early to say that, especially after her last fight against Rose Namajunas, but she's pretty talented. Good boxing, good wrestling. I think if she can increase her finishing ability and maybe, I don't know, look like she actually wants to get the fight done, she's going to be I don't want to say dangerous, but she could be legit in this division. But it was a good win for Tracy Cortez. Dominates Araujo. And in terms of Araujo, she kept complaining. Apparently the commentator said that it was something to do with Tracy Cortez being oiled up. I don't know why she'd be complaining about that, but she loses the fight. Tracy Cortez gets the job done as expected. Good win for Tracy Cortez. Then we had Hyder Amil versus Jose Delgado. Now, I'm not going to, go back on my pick. I thought Hyder Amil was going to get the job done, but there was something about Jose Delgado. I did say in the prediction video that if anybody's going to get a finish, it will be Delgado. This guy's been smoking people on the regional scene, smoking people in the UFC, just like he did to Conor Matthews, and he brutally slumps Hyder Amil pretty early on, lands a mean knee, slumps him out cold, and then goes for the, well, not out cold, but then gets the ground and pound finish, and Jose Delgado dominates Hyder Amil within the short span of time that they had in the octagon. Delgado's a beast. I mean, if you look at his record as well before the UFC, it was just him TKOing people. He slumped Conor Matthews a couple of months back, and in this matchup against Hyder Amil, I thought, listen, Delgado's a prospect, but this is a massive step up against Hyder Amil. This guy's 3-0 in the UFC, tough as nails, and he just slumps him like it's nothing. Lands the knee to the jaw, drops him, folds him like a lawn chair, goes for the ground and pound finish. It wouldn't surprise me if Delgado's going to be one of the guys who are bonus on this card. And it's tough for Hyder and Amil. I kind of feel bad for him because he's such a fun fighter. If you remember his fight with Sung Woo Choi, he is just a kill or be killed guy, swinging for the fences, always trying to make it a fun fight. And this was a bit of a step down in competition that he didn't really deserve because he's on a 3-fight win streak. You thought for maybe Hyder and Amil, give him somebody in the top 15 and they've just fed him to Jose Delgado. So I do feel a bit bad for him, but he's usually game and I reckon he'll come back from it. And yeah, Jose Delgado, it's a huge win for Delgado. You know, probably going to get, I don't think he's going to get somebody in the top 15 after that, but definitely got big implications after that performance. So good win for Delgado. Wouldn't mind if he gets to 50k, and this guy is legit, probably one of the better prospects right now in the featherweight division. Maybe he doesn't have this long list of names, but that single win over Amil alone, massively impressive for Delgado. Then we had probably the most brutal KO we've had in the UFC this year, or one of them. This has to get 50k, or maybe they don't give him 50k because of how brutal it was. But Gregory Rodrigues absolutely slumps Jack Hermansson in this fight. One of those really brutal KOs, lands a massive uppercut and folds Jack Hermansson. And if laying him out cold wasn't enough, he then goes for a brutal hammer fist as well to top it all off. This has to be one of the most brutal finishes I've seen in the UFC this year. I knew Gregory Rodrigues hit hard, but I didn't know it hit this hard. I thought it was like a Sergey Pavlovich where he breaks people down with the striking. I didn't know it was just one punch KO power like he did against Jack Hermansson, who's known to be pretty tough. He must hit like a motherfucker, and he's huge for the division as well. Gregory Rodrigues is huge. He must hit so hard. Middleweight, you've got a Sergey Pavlovich. Patient Rodrigues is terrifying. We saw him take a much more patient approach in this fight. Obviously, in the Cannonier fight and in previous fights, he's kind of just in your face trying to get the finish, and it works most of the time because he's so powerful, but he looked patient in this fight, landed one kind of clean uppercut, and it was enough to send Jack Hermansson out cold, flatland on the canvas. I say we give him a 50k. I know people are going to be complaining about the hammer fist, but it's MMA, man. This is the shit you sign up for. It's the referee, it's Herb Dean's fault for not getting in enough. I know you might think he's a bit of a scumbag move, but it's MMA. It's the UFC. It is what it is. Patient Rodrigues is terrifying. And I know we just got finished by Jared Cannonier, but listen, if his gas tank can clear up, which seemed to be the biggest flaw, this guy can go on a run. You know, if he stays a bit more patient, works on his gas tank, because of his power alone, and the fact that he's obviously a grappling world champion too, this guy can honestly go on a bit of a run in the middleweight division. He's only 33 years old, and Jack Hermansson, he should retire. I know he beat Joe Pyfer last fight, but the guy's 37 years old. He's not particularly active. He's probably going to be out for about 9 months. He's not going to go on some sort of title run. He's been finished so many times in the UFC. I think for Jack Hermansson at this moment in time, there's nothing left for him. He's had his run back in like leading up to like 2021. Since then, he's kind of just been falling off, and now that he's been brutally finished that badly, I doubt he's going to be back in the next 11 months. So if I'm Jack Hermansson, I'm retiring, and for Gregory Rodrigues, probably the hardest hit. Imagine him and Joe Pyfer in the middleweight division. I honestly think Gregory Rodrigues might hit harder than him. I know Joe Pyfer gets hyped for his hard-hitting ability, but Gregory Rodrigues, the way that they just slumped him with the uppercut, give him a 50k, brutal finish. Payton Talbott, fraud no more, as he beats Felipe Lima pretty dominantly. I don't want to say too dominantly, because Felipe Lima had his moments, but Payton Talbott, this guy's improved tenfold. This guy's grappling has improved tenfold. I thought it was going to be a defensive grappling approach from Payton Talbott in this fight. It wasn't even defensive, it was offensive from Payton Talbott, who's out wrestling Felipe Lima, who coming into this fight I thought had really good wrestling. This was a dominant performance. Choo-choo, the hype train for Payton Talbott is back, and he's improved tenfold. To get dominated by Houndie Barcelos and then get an even tougher matchup against Felipe Lima and perform like that, dominated him in most exchanges. I was massively impressed by Payton Talbott. We've seen it before with fighters. They take their first loss, like Adrian Yanez, for example, takes his first bad loss and he can't really come back. And Payton Talbott, you can tell that he's been working in his grappling, because he was out grappling Felipe Lima, and he's honestly back. And this was a really tough fight to take after Houndie Barcelos unexpectedly dominating in the grappling. And Felipe Lima had his moments, you know, he was actually, I'd say Felipe Lima probably won most of the striking exchanges. I think the biggest problem for Payton Talbott on the feet is his head movement. It's shown in all of his fights. He walks forward with this heavy pressure approach, but he kind of keeps his head on the center line, and Felipe Lima kind of capitalized on that, was able to catch Payton Talbott a few times, but apart from that and a couple of odd takedowns here and there, it was Payton Talbott's fight, and massively impressive. I thought Felipe Lima was going to dominate him. Payton Talbott proved me wrong. He called out Adrian Yanez. I would like to see Malcolm Wellmaker versus Yanez. I think that's a perfect fight for Wellmaker, but for Payton Talbott, give him a striker, let him have a striking matchup, let him showcase his striking like he did against Cameron Simon on a pay-per-view main card as well. He deserved it after this. So, dominant win for Payton Talbott. The choo-choo, the hype train is back. I honestly think he can probably break the top 15 at bantamweight eventually because, like I said, the guy's improved tenfold and he's quite a green into his UFC career. For Felipe Lima, maybe not top 15 worthy just yet, but still a talented dude. Fell short to Payton Talbott, is what it is. But Payton Talbott, what about us back? Ain't no fraud. Then we had Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. Moicano must not be desperate enough for the money. He must not need the money enough. He must not be hungry enough for the money because Beneil Dariush dominated the fight. It wasn't the prettiest fight. Nothing really significant in this fight took place apart from Moicano dropping Dariush in the first, but Dariush just dominates Moicano with a grappling across 15 minutes and picks up a decision win. Yeah, it wasn't a fun fight. Like I said, there's nothing really to talk about apart from Moicano dropping Dariush in the first, which, even though Dariush is coming off a dominant win, when you're getting dropped by Renato Moicano, you really got to question the chin of Dariush at some points, but it was a dominant performance, and this was always going to be a terrible fight for Moicano. This is why I picked Dariush to win this fight. Even if Dariush is old and he's got a bad chin, it isn't like he's facing this dangerous striker. He's facing Moicano. Moicano's got very basic striking with a grappling game. Beneil Dariush is a better grappler, probably an even, if not a better striker. This was never a good fight for Moicano, and I just think Moicano's simply not top 10 material. He's a fun personality, one of the better personalities in the lightweight division. It's fun to have him around, but he's just not top 10 material. He's a very he's definitely not a basic grappler. He's a high-level grappler with very, very limited striking, and unfortunately at 155, that just ain't enough. And it's a solid win for Dariush. Like I said, dominated Moicano, was winning most of the striking exchanges and just dominated him with the wrestling. It's hard to match make Dariush though now because most guys, I mean, everybody in the top 5 is coming off wins and looking to get a belt. Well, not everyone, but you know, most of them are coming off wins looking to get a title fight. And then you look outside the top 5, Dan Hooker, he beat Gamrot, he's on a winning streak, doesn't make sense to fight down. Gamrot, he's already lost to Beneil Dariush. It's kind of hard to matchmaking, but he's coming off a dominant win. I'm sure he wants a couple more fights before the end of his career. Tough for Moicano, but just simply not top 10 material. And then we had Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. Fuck 50k bonuses, give him 100k. This was fight of the year, and we've had some good fights this year already, but this definitely takes the cake for the fight of the year. The UFC were actually going to scrap the flyweight division at one point, and I'm glad they didn't. It was like putting 2 frogs in a blender and turning the blender on. Both of these guys just swinging at each other for the entire fight. Joshua Van piecing up Royval with the boxing combinations, and the second that he'd hurt Royval, Royval had answered back with another big shot. This has to be one of the best fights this year. I don't think you could find a single 5 seconds in this fight where one of them wasn't landing or at least throwing a punch on each other. Joshua Van gets the win. But what a fight this was. Both guys just swinging back and forth the entire fight. And I said this coming into the fight. This is why I said this is going to be fight of the night. You get 2 high output strikers, 2 walk forward strikers who are known for their elite boxing. It's going to lead to violence. And Joshua Van at 23 years old, who's on a 7-1 run in the UFC, 2 wins in June in dominant fashion on pay-per-views as well, has cemented himself as the next title challenger, and he's 100% getting a performance bonus. Joshua Van has to be one of the best prospects. I mean, by far, he's not even a prospect anymore, as a contender. Has to be one of the best contenders we've got in the UFC. And he's a star at flyweight. I'm so glad he's won the fight as well, because even if Royval would have won the fight, right, you cannot sell Royval versus Pantoja 3, and I'm going to talk about Pantoja in a minute, but you just cannot sell that fight. Joshua Van and Pantoja, the best striker versus the best grappler in the division. Sign me the fuck up. I don't even care if it's a pay-per-view main event. I know I've complained in the past about Pantoja headlining pay-per-views because he's not really a star, but Van and Pantoja, I don't care, man. Let headline a pay-per-view event. But great performance from both guys. Give them both 100k. Brandon Royval, Joshua Van, short notice fight, and like I said, just both swinging back and forth. Joshua Van walking forward, picking apart Brandon Royval with the boxing, and then the second he get picked apart, Brandon Royval would answer something back. And then in the last 10 seconds as well, I was kind of getting flashbacks of Holloway and Gaethje, where Joshua Van drops Brandon Royval as they're exchanging in the last 10 seconds, goes for the finish, doesn't get the finish. I think Royval thought the fight had been stopped. This might be the last time we see Royval at flyweight as well, because he has said before that he wants to move up to bantamweight, and honestly, I mean, I don't really know why he wants to move to bantamweight. I assume it's because he doesn't want to remain as a gatekeeper at 125. But if he does move up to bantamweight, I think him and Rob Font could be a banger. But for Joshua Van, get him and Pantoja on ASAP. But this is a fight of the night. One of the best fights I've seen this year. Both guys just swinging back and forth. And it kind of saved the main card as well. The first 2 fights in the main card, they weren't necessarily bad. I mean, the Dariush fight was bad, but this saved the card. Best fight on the card by far, in my opinion. Give them both. Fuck 50k. Give them 100k. And talking of Alexandre Pantoja, he's not that far from overtaking Demetrius Johnson. Gets the submission of a Kai France in the first round. in the third round, sorry. Yeah, dominant performance from Pantoja. He absolutely dominated Kai Kara-France from start to finish. Took him down, took his back the entire first round. Second round, it was a little bit more competitive, but in the third, he decided that he'd had enough, doesn't want to go into championship rounds, and just chokes out Kai Kara-France, as I expected. And now we're going to be seeing one of the best fights we've had in modern flyweight history with Joshua Van and Alexandre Pantoja. But before I talk about that fight, yeah, dominant win for Pantoja. He is so good. He is so good. He's unstoppable in the flyweight division. Pantoja, as expected, just absolutely dominates Kai Kara-France, and I think most people knew that Kara-France probably wasn't going to win this fight. You know, he's it's good knocking out Steve Erceg with that overhand right. It's got to have a little bit of a power in the flyweight division, but when you're 1-2 coming into a title fight with the best flyweight in modern history, it's never a good look. But yeah, Pantoja, I know we say this after every fight, but if he's not in the top 5 pound for pound list come Tuesday, we need to boycott the UFC the same way that we boycotted John Jones for holding onto the belt. We need to do the same thing for Pantoja if he's not top 5 pound for pound. He has cleared out this division. He's top 10 greatest of all time in the UFC, 4 title defenses, 5 title wins over like a shit ton of names in the top 15 I can't even count. He's one of the greatest of all time, and he's definitely the second of greatest of all time. Listen, when the guy with the greatest of all time in your division is Demetrius Johnson, it's very unlikely that you ever overtake him. But I honestly think Pantoja, if he can get maybe 2 to 3 more defenses, he's on track to being the same greatness as Demetrius Johnson. And Pantoja versus Van, it's needed. It's an immovable object versus unstoppable force. Joshua Van, who's picking everybody apart, the best boxer in this division, you know, just on an absolute roll right now against Pantoja, who, like I just said, seems that he's just lapping the division because he's so far ahead of everybody. Sign me the fuck up. Pay-per-view main event, I don't care. Pantoja versus Joshua Van, I need that ASAP. Kai Kara-France, his stock has dropped so much recently. I know leading up to this, everybody was calling him Kai Kara cringe because of his old Maury thing and that cringy face that he does leading up to face-offs, and then he goes out there and gets dominated by Pantoja. So I feel like his stock has definitely dropped, but yeah, this was. I feel like this title fight was just a bit of a filler. You know what I mean? We had Kai Sakura versus Pantoja. We've got Pantoja versus Joshua Van coming up. This was a bit of a filler, but Pantoja, one of the top 10 greatest of all time, and definitely the second greatest flyweight of all time. If he can keep this run up, honestly, he's in the conversation of overtaking Demetrius Johnson. And then we had Ilia Topuria versus Oliveira. How does he do every single thing he says he's going to do? He says he's going to knock out Volkanovski, who's never been beat at featherweight before. He knocks him out cold. He says he's going to knock out Holloway, who's never been knocked out before. He knocks him out cold. And then he says he's going to knock out Oliveira in a weight class above, as everyone's calling him a fucking midget. And he knocks out Oliveira in the first round. Absolutely slumps Oliveira. Just a nice 1-2, 2 hooks, and slumps Charles Oliveira out cold in the first round. He's unstoppable. How is he this good? How is he this good? Everything this guy says he does. If he told me that he wants to move up to welterweight tomorrow and fight Jack Della Maddalena for the welterweight belt and he's going to knock him out within the first 3 minutes, what am I supposed to say? I can't deny him anymore. He's undeniable in the UFC. He's just on an absolute roll right now. We've never seen anybody like, apart from maybe Prime McGregor, we've never really seen anybody in the UFC before that he's like this, with his confidence being at an all-time high, celebrating before the fight, and they're performing in the way that he does, where if he says he's going to do it, he does it. Slumps Oliveira in the first round, and he was winning every exchange as well. He managed to maintain dominant position on the ground against Charles Oliveira, was lighting him up on the feet before, and then he just decided that he was bored of being in the octagon for too long, clips Oliveira with 2 massive hooks, and slumps him out cold. He's insanely talented. I don't see anybody beating him. I said before maybe Sarukian at 155 could beat him because I do think that's the toughest matchup for Topuria, but I honestly think Topuria beats Sarukian now as well. They're hyping up Paddy versus Topuria, and even though that's a massive fight and I think it should be next, let's be honest, mate, it's not going to be competitive in the slightest. Topuria's knocking him out cold as well. He knocks everyone out cold. There's no competition for Topuria, and this is why him and Makhachev is much needed, because the only guy he can really be compared to is pound for pound number 1 Makhachev, who's also unstoppable as well. Him and Makhachev would be a super fight. I hope they can eventually sort that fight out at welterweight, because Topuria ain't losing the belt at 155. He might actually go down as the greatest of all time. If he can, you know, maybe defend 1 or 2 more times at 155, move up and get his belt at welterweight as well, he might be the greatest of all time. Nobody beats this guy, any weight class. Mate, if you put him against Aspinall and he was confident enough that he could beat Aspinall, mate, I'm picking Topuria to beat Aspinall as well. He's unstoppable in this division. It sucks as a Charles Oliveira fan, because Topuria's just beating all our fan favourites. Volk, Holloway, Oliveira. It's like he's on this speed run of beating all our fan favourite fighters, but I kind of saw this coming. It was never a good matchup for Oliveira to begin with. Ilia Topuria, and new lightweight champion of the world. This guy is on a completely different level, and he might go down as one of the greatest of all time. Ilia Topuria, Paddy Pimblett's probably going to be next, but this guy's on a fucking completely different level as the champion. Now, how would I rate this card? Honestly, I thought this was a great card. One of the best cards this year. It was pretty stacked on paper, and it performed. The prelims were sick. The main card, apart from maybe 1 or 2 stinky performances, was sick as well. I was a massive fan of UFC 317 International Fight Week. Definitely going to go down as one of the best international fights we've had. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this card, and let me know your thoughts on Topuria. Who beats him? Who should he fight next? I'm lost for words. The guy's unstoppable.